And that's one of the reasons why we have our guest on today, Chris Shumate. He is a estate planning attorney. And
The estate tax really is kind of a low priority tax for Congress. I mean, it doesn't bring in that much revenue. Like if you think about the income tax brings in trillions and trillions of dollars in revenue for the federal government. But the estate tax really just it brings in maybe tens of billions of dollars. That sounds like a lot, but when you got a federal budget that's 7 trillion dollars or something like that, tens of billions of dollars just really isn't that big of a deal.
barely a rounding error, right?
What's that?
So it's barely a rounding error at that
Right,
point.
exactly.
Wasn't there one year, it seemed like it was probably like 10 years ago, where the exemption went down to zero? Like if you died, there was no state tax?
Yeah, so that was 2010, and so that was another provision where the estate tax was going up, 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 and then in 2010 it was done away with entirely, and then in 2011 it went down to $1 million, and so everybody thought, okay, well we're going to have this year where we're going to have no estate tax, and then we're going to go back down to $1 million. It's going to sunset, and that's just a great example of we got to December of 2010, and sure enough, it didn't sunset. Congress, extended the estate tax exemption another 2 years, and then in 2013 we had the fiscal cliff legislation, and that extended it and raised it some more. And so, yeah, in 2010 there was no estate tax. That was very historic, and so there are a lot of wealthy, billionaires that died in 2010, and their estate suffered no estate tax. So that was a windfall.
Yeah, for sure. So Bitcoin's been on the rise recently, so it's hit all-time highs in the last couple of weeks. It seems to go through these gigantic fluctuations, probably dropped. I think the number is in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, it's lost 50 to 80% of its value 8 times now, and then rebounded at a higher rate every single time. So as of yesterday, it was 69,000 per Bitcoin, which was higher than it was at the last high. Do these digital currencies provide or pose an added challenge to estate planning for you?
Yeah, cryptocurrencies are difficult from an estate planning point of view. I'm not an expert in the area. I don't own any cryptocurrency, but I have clients that obviously own it from time to time. And so cryptocurrency is, owning, cash under the mattress, or owning, gold bars, under the bed or something like that. Whoever holds, the thing, owns it. And so if you get robbed, and somebody, walks away with all your gold bars, or you get robbed and somebody walks away with all the cash under the mattress, then they own it, and so the same thing with cryptocurrency. Like there's no good way of, titling, an interest in a person's name, at least from what I know. And so whoever holds that key or the fob or whatever it is that, gets you the wallet, that gets you the access to the cryptocurrency, that person owns it, regardless of whether or not they were the legitimate owner. So it's from that perspective, it makes me nervous because I like to have everything titled in the name of a trust. I'd like to have okay, these bank accounts are all in the name of the trust. These brokerage accounts are all in the name of the trust. These real estate is all owned in the name of the trust. To my knowledge, there's no real good way of having cryptocurrency in the name of a trust. And so if you have a nefarious beneficiary or family member who decides, what, I'm going to rip off dad or grandpa or something like that, and I'm going to take their key right after they die, then they legitimately own that cryptocurrency, and they can do with it whatever they want. There's really not a lot of recourse as far as going after them for it. Stuart, you probably know a little bit more about this than I do. Am I correct in my assumptions?
Well, yes, if you're just owning the straight Bitcoin, you're exactly right. That's you just need that key. Now you can own Bitcoin now through ETFs and hold them in, let's say, Coinbase accounts and other wallets. And so you would have to be registered under that account name. It would be very challenging for somebody to step in to a Coinbase account and just take it over without anybody knowing. But if you you actually own the actual digital currency and you kept it off one of the brokerage houses, then yes.
Got it. So the brokerage houses are kind of like Schwab or TD Ameritrade or something like that. And so you open an account in Coinbase kind of the same way that you would in Schwab or some other brokerage. Yeah. So in that case, you could actually title it in the name of a trust, and it becomes a little bit more, a little bit easier to deal with.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, and I want to be clear, we're not recommending anything illegal. That said, it's almost sounded like I just find this topic interesting because I've had clients throughout my course of history try to circumvent certain things in the past. So like if somebody had a bunch of gold bars in their basement, in their ceiling, in their safe or what have you, and it wasn't like the dad said, hey, just take these gold bars and go. What are let's approach it with the legal part. Maybe you don't even know the answer, but I'm just curious. What are the dangers of that? Of somebody just grabbing these gold bars? What if they get caught? I mean, if they get first prosecuted by the law, who's going to prosecute them? Like, have you ever seen a case like that where that's actually happened and somebody just took them?
Yeah. So
or gold bars or any of these things, and what happened?
Had a case where somebody's walked off with inappropriately walked off with cash or gold bars, but gold bars and cash, it's just a tangible personal property. It's the same as artwork that's on the wall or the desk or pots and pans or whatever. And so it's just valuable. There's a market for it. You can sell it. And so, pots and pans you're going to be able to sell at a garage sale, but gold bars and cash has a ready market, and it's much more valuable. And so you can be prosecuted the same way that you steal anything. I mean, so it's still theft. If you break into somebody's home, and so you can still call the police and have the person prosecuted. And so if somebody steals a whole bunch of gold bars, you can sue that person in civil court for theft, conversion, and a host of other civil actions. But the issue is that it's not insured, it's not backed by a bank. If you have somebody who's walked off with a whole bunch of cash or a whole bunch of precious metals, then what's your remedy? These people, other than arresting them and putting them in jail, getting a felony or a misdemeanor, these people that would accomplish these types of acts usually aren't they don't have assets themselves in order to pay the estate back or pay the trust back. And so then it's a matter of trying to get the gold bars or the precious metals back or the cash back. And usually by the time that you find out about it, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, that's why it definitely has an element of risk by owning those types of assets, particularly owning those types of assets in your home, is because if you do get burgled, and somebody walks off with them, it's really hard to get made whole unless you have some maybe insurance policy or something like that. That's that risk. But yeah.
So, a lot of times we're in finance, we just deal with the cold hard facts. And normally in my world, I don't have a lot of emotional swings that I have to deal with unless the market's crashing. And even then, it's not usually horrible. But given that your whole job revolves around the potential thought of somebody dying or has just died, it's obviously extremely emotionally charged. So can you talk a little bit more about your experience there? How have you handled some of those emotional aspects of estate planning with the grieving family, or you're talking about the demise of somebody and coming face to face with their own mortality?
Sure. So, a death of a loved one is, extremely emotionally rocking event for the family. And so anybody who's listening to this or, and has experienced a loved one die, knows kind of the gravity of what that loss can be like. My dad died in 2018, and I was, amazed by, just how difficult that was for me emotionally. Just processing, my dad's death, not only, right after it happened, but, months and months and months after it happened as well. And so what that experience has taught me is just, how difficult it is for families when they come into my office and they're dealing with the death of a parent, sibling, or sometimes the death of a child. And so I always try to, in a certain way, kind of put myself in their shoes and remember back, how difficult it was for me when I had my dad die. And so, a lot of times, when they're meeting with me, it's hard for them to, put everything, put everything together in an organized way. A lot of times there's, kind of chaos that's going on, and they have a lot of questions from a lot of different topics, and a lot of different issues that they're facing. And because they're just kind of going through the trauma of dealing with the death of this person, a lot of times they have to, ask the questions multiple times, provide explanations, register. And so what I try to do is I just try to be as patient as I can and explain it as simply as I can. And after somebody's died, then a lot of times, it requires, maybe, multiple meetings with that person before it, kind of sinks in as far as everything that I'm talking about. The issues that I deal with, are complex. Just the same way, Stuart, that the issues that you deal with are complex in your field. And so on a good day, sometimes it's difficult for people to kind of wrap their head around everything that I'm talking about. But you compound that with, the trauma of just losing a loved one, and it becomes very difficult to kind of digest everything.
Yeah, it's for sure a hard part. I have all my parents, and my wife does too. So we're obviously not looking forward to any of this coming. Everybody's happy and healthy so far. So, but eventually we all have to go through this. So it's going to be a tough situation for everybody involved. But it's obviously better to plan for it ahead of time than to not plan for it and then not only be dealing with these emotional hardships, but then also be dealing with the legal and technical hardships of, let's say, probate court and a variety of other things.
Right. I mean, what I can tell you is that if people put these plans in place in advance, it makes it so much easier for the family. I mean, it's not going to be easy in that, dealing with the death of a loved one and having to marshal the assets and, you know, even if attorney in the state of California, it's still going to
Sure.
be still going to be a difficult situation. But you compare that to the chaos that people have to deal with when there's no plan in place, when there has been no communication with the children or the beneficiaries as to what they have, and they're just completely lost as far as what the next step is and how to even wrap their head around getting through this process. It's so much easier if the plans are put in place in advance.
Yeah. Can you tell me some fun case studies you've had or circumstances that you've had where obviously it makes a difference every single time, but there's some outstanding cases that you can think of that just really, really, thank goodness they went through this process when they did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it might be everyone.
Yeah.
Some outstanding ones.
Well, I mean, what I would say is that we have basically three different areas to my practice. We have the estate planning practice, which is setting up the plans in advance. We have the trust administration end of our practice, which is administering the trust after somebody has died. And then we have the probate practice, which is basically dealing with estates when there has been no planning in place, and dealing with the court process at that end. And so
it seems like one of your arms is trying to put out a business, another part of your business. Like your trust formation business is trying to put out your probate business.
Right, but the problem is that I'm never going to be able to do enough trusts to get rid of the things, because there is way more people that don't plan than there are people that plan. But yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to kind of put myself out of business as far as the probate arm. But what I can tell you is that dealing with trust administration, there's certain challenges that always go into that. But from my experience, there's just it's just so much easier for the family to deal with the administration of a trust out of court, without the exorbitant fees, without the exorbitant waits in time. I was in court yesterday. I'm sorry, not yesterday, Monday. I was in court Monday morning. And we were wrapping up a probate. This was somebody that had died a couple years ago. And I found an account a week before the hearing, a week before the probate was to close.
2 years later.
Yeah, 2 years later. So we had to scramble and update the inventory, amend the petition, and get it filed. Well, the court, the San Bernardino County Court, where I have a lot of my cases,